one of the biggest challenges I see for women is we want to be efficient and we want to be fast and we want to power pee and get out of there as fast as possible, but it's damaging your pelvic floor over time. Sit down on the toilet. Don't hover unless it's like a totally gross toilet. Sit down, lean forward, and relax. So don't push your pee out. You should just sit and chill. You should only go to the bathroom when you have the urge to go. You really should try to cut out those just-in-case pees. What's normal to pee is every 2 to 4 hours. But say you go before you drop off your kids in the morning, and then when you get back, and then before you go to the gym, and you don't even have the urge, your bladder shrinks. Then you end up having to go to the bathroom every 30 minutes and every hour, and then you're going to the bathroom all the time, and you're kind of messing up the signals because the bladder's not full.
Well, hello there, and welcome to this episode of The Terri Cole Show. Let me ask you something. How much do you know about your pelvic floor? Sincerely, how much? Do you know anything at all? Do you have a vague idea? I knew it had something to do with kegeling, and that if I wasn't peeing in my pants when I was jumping on my trampoline, my pelvic floor was probably okay. That was a very cursory knowledge. Well, if you're sort of shrugging the way that I was about it, I have such a treat for you. Today, I'm so excited. I interviewed Dr. Sara Reardon, who has a brand new book out called Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Every Stage. And if you're seeing this, look how gorgeous that is. So Sara, she was so engaging. She was so informative. I learned so much. She's a board-certified pelvic floor physical therapist with over 18 years of experience helping individuals prevent and overcome pelvic floor issues, including urinary leakage, painful sex, prolapse, and discomfort during pregnancy, postpartum, and menopause. Hello, she's known as the Vagina Whisperer online. She has almost 700,000 people following her on Instagram. She's been featured all over the place, from InStyle to Today to Harper's Bazaar. She's the founder of VHive, an on-live sex and pelvic floor strengthening. It's basically an on-demand pelvic floor fitness platform. So, and if people pre-order the book, she's giving you 30 days in her vagina gym, basically. So anyway, without further ado, I hope that you enjoyed this interview with Dr. Sara Reardon as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. Well, hello there. I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Sara Reardon to the Terri Cole Show. Welcome, Sara.
Thanks so much for having me, Terri.
Sure. Should I call you Dr. Sara? What do people call you besides the Vagina Whisperer, which we're going to get to?
So outside of the Vagina Whisperer, Sara works just fine.
Okay, cool. So many questions, so many thoughts, so many things. Like this is, there's so many of my crew that are perimenopausal, menopausal, and any age or stage, pelvic floor health is important. So before we get into all of that and what's happening in this book, I want to ask you how you got here, right? So let's say you are a Marvel movie character. What would your origin story be that brought you to this moment?
I love that. So I went to physical therapy school when I was in my early 20s, right after college, and got my degree, a doctorate in physical therapy. And while I was in graduate school, I had a 2-week lecture series on women's health, now called pelvic health. And it just really educated us about a part of our body I had never heard, a group of muscles called the pelvic floor that was responsible for peeing and pooping and sex and played a role in pregnancy and menopause. And I thought, why don't we talk about this? Like, I don't understand this part of my body as a woman. Why doesn't every woman know this? And so I jumped right into that practice after grad school in 2007, which makes me feel like a dinosaur right now that I've been working and practicing for that long. And working with other women and helping them with really sensitive, often embarrassing, intimate issues and seeing their quality of life change through pelvic floor therapy and understanding their body has just been the most rewarding career, and I wanted everyone to have access to that, which led me to writing my book, Floored.
Amazing. So tell us, what are when you have a weakened floor, or I don't even know the right verbiage to use how do we describe it if you have, because as a therapist, everything we talk about is like disordered or dysfunction.
Right.
So if you have
dysfunctional,
dysfunctional pelvic floor. So what are some of the signs and symptoms if people don't know? Maybe they think something else is wrong with them. What are some of the signs and symptoms?
Well, this is such a great question because often I think people don't know if there's a pelvic floor problem because we don't even know what a normal pelvic floor does. So,
Fact.
when we're talking about normal bladder habits, it's to pee every 2 to 4 hours, to be able to make it to the bathroom without leakage, or cough or sneeze or exercise without leakage, and to wake maybe once at night to pee. Anything outside of that range is dysfunction. The same thing with bowel movements. We should have a bowel movement um, anywhere from 3 times a day to 3 times a week, but without straining. It should be soft, easy to pass, no pain, hemorrhoids, discomfort, no fecal staining, no skid marks in the underwear, really easy to clean your bottom. And then another big one is sexual health. So we should be able to have sexual activity and intercourse without pain, without discomfort. And those are probably the three most common arenas I see problems. There's, leakage, frequent bladder issues. It feels like you have a urinary tract infection, but you don't. But also constipation, hemorrhoids, fissures, and then sexual pain and discomfort.
Okay. So that's like a wide array of things or symptoms that people can be experiencing. So before we get into sort of helping people, I need to go back to the Vagina Whisperer, because this is a moniker that has been gifted to you. So this is what you're known as on the interwebs. So how did you become known as the Vagina Whisperer, please?
Right. I left that out of my Marvel story. So,
You
after
did.
after graduate school, about 2008, 2009, I was still getting together with my college friends every summer for the 4th of July. And we would all just kind of hang out by the pool and have fun. And then one summer, I was sitting in the hot tub and I ended up talking to all of their moms. And I was talking to their moms about their pelvic pain and their pelvic organ prolapse and their recent surgery and their leakage. And so I was, in my mid-20s hanging out with, some 60-year-old women in the hot tub. And they were like, gosh, Sarah's like the Vagina Whisperer. And so they gave me the name. And when I started my Instagram account, it was really for my group of girlfriends because we were all pregnant and going through birth. And I was just sharing tips with them. And so I named the account for them, and it has really just blossomed and grown to, over 675,000 followers right now. And I think it's a real testament that women want this information and they're not getting it from anywhere else.
It's amazing, though, how when something starts organically
Right.
like that it's not just those ladies sitting at the pool. You obviously know they're representative of so many other women having similar problems. So
Right.
could you, we talked a little bit about what the pelvic floor, when it's functioning well, helps you do, right? So poop, pee, have regular sex, be able to hold your urine when you're working out, sneezing, laughing, those things. But can we get a little basic? And this might make me sound basic, but what even is the pelvic floor, and what does it actually do? Because I'm still a little confused, although I understand the results and
Right.
the problems if it's not working well.
It's not basic at all. And I think that we're never given this education. We learn maybe about periods, maybe about sex, but nobody really teaches us about the pelvic floor. And that's why in the book, I kind of jump right into it and describe what this basket of muscles does. So, your pelvic floor muscles sit like a hammock at the very base of your pelvis. So we've got these pelvic bones that we can put our hands on our hips. And at the bottom of that is a basket of muscles that attach from your pubic bone in your front all the way to your tailbone and then side to side. And inside of that basket rest your pelvic organs. So your uterus and ovaries, your bladder, which holds, urine, your bowels that hold poop. And so it's a supportive mechanism for those organs. When you're pregnant and you have a growing baby, that muscle stretches to support your growing uterus and fetus. And then after birth, we hope that it kind of comes back. Now, the other thing is that the pelvic floor muscles have 3 openings in the female body. One is for urine, the urinary sphincter that holds urine in but also relaxes to help it empty. One is the anal sphincter that helps hold in gas and stool and then relaxes to empty. And then the third opening is the vagina, which is in the center. And the vagina is for intercourse, menstruation, vaginal birth. And so, so many things that happen to the pelvic floor affect all of these different systems. This muscle can get weaker with aging, with constant straining or pressure through pregnancy and birth, but it can also get too tense. Like we get tense muscles in our neck and shoulder, and that gives us headaches. It can cause tailbone pain, hip pain, difficulty emptying our bladder, painful intercourse, those type of things. So it's really a basket of muscles that is involved in all of these systems.
Okay, so
So it's
some
important.
ideas. It is, but I have you just taught me something super important, Sarah. I'm picturing this basket of muscles, and like it makes sense because I've heard so much about this, and obviously I just got the book, so I didn't have time to read it yet, and I'm definitely going to. But it's like that makes sense. So, we talk about? You hear a lot on the interwebs of people talk about strengthening the pelvic floor. And my listeners know that my main form of exercise is the mini trampoline that I jump on pretty much every single day and have for the past since the pandemic. And I friggin' love it so much. And I heard that's good for your pelvic floor. Is that true?
It can be if you don't have significant weakness. Some
Got it.
women so the trampoline is great. And I even think of the pelvic floor like a little trampoline. Like it
Mm,
kind of bounces up and down, it supports, it moves. It's not like a static floor, right? It's really more like
yeah.
a trampoline that can respond when there's weight above it
Yeah.
and rebound back up. And I think trampoline workouts are awesome for your core. They're awesome for
Mm-hmm.
mobility. They get your
Yeah.
heart rate up without a lot of impact. But for a lot of women who have weakness, which they may pee their pants, they may have pelvic organ prolapse where the organs kind of start to push into the vaginal canal and there's like a
Mm,
heaviness or pressure in the vagina. Those women are not going to respond well to trampoline jumping because there's the support mechanism's already kind of like exhausted, right? And then you're putting more pressure
right.
on it and it just gets a little bit weaker. So that's where we want to think about doing more strengthening without the jumping. And you can build pelvic floor strengthening into any workout, into Pilates, into bar, into strength training, which is so important in perimenopause and menopause. It's just
Hmm.
learning how to contract that muscle and then also relax it properly.
So when you say contract, is that like doing Kegels?
A Kegel is a pelvic
Oh,
floor muscle
Kegel.
contraction. It's
Kegel.
actually Kegel or Kegel. I mean, it's like
Oh, okay.
tomato, tomato. But it's so funny because this exercise was named after a physician who did a research study testing like how much a woman could contract her vaginal canal, and his name was Arnold Kegel. And so he named this exercise after him, which I feel like we need to get away from like naming female body parts and other things against, after male physicians.
Agreed.
Agreed. So, but a Kegel is a pelvic floor contraction. So it's when you close those sphincters, you hold in urine, you hold in gas, you tighten the vagina, and you lift that trampoline up. So it's not just a
Hmm.
squeeze, it's a squeeze and lift. And the way that I often coach people to do a Kegel contraction is to kind of sit up nice and tall, have your feet flat, your legs
We're doing one
uncrossed.
right now, you guys. You're
Right.
listening. We're doing it. Okay.
Exactly. Sit up nice and tall so that this muscle, this trampoline has room to move up and down. And then take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, you think about sipping up a smoothie with your vagina. And you
Hmm.
feel a little drawing up. You're like, what is that? Right? So again, just relax it all the way, but then you inhale again and exhale and think about sipping up a smoothie. It might be really weak. It might be a little faint kind of flicker of a contraction. But what we want people to get away from is this like tightening and squeezing. They're like clenching their butt and squeezing their thighs together. And that's not a pelvic floor contraction. A pelvic floor
Right.
contraction is a squeeze and a lift, but then you relax completely afterwards.
Yes. All right. So part of the issue with this that you write about in the book is that a lot of people have pelvic floor problems. So we've already established that sometimes you don't know that that's what you're experiencing. You're having these symptoms, but you're like, maybe I'm constipated from something else, or maybe you don't even think that it can be a part of this. So what happens when they go to the doctor? What you're saying is that a lot of women are dismissed, right? They don't realize like what's going on or that there's something available for them to do to make it better. So what are common symptoms of we have this, the pelvic floor dysfunction is these are what we've been talking about, or is there other things?
No, it's, part of that, but I'll give you an example. I just got a message from someone today on social media, and she's like, I'm pregnant. This is my first pregnancy. I'm only 14 weeks, but I'm already leaking urine. And my doctor told me to not worry about it. It's totally normal, and to come back and see them after I give birth. And like, if it's still a problem, then maybe we'll fix it. And didn't mention anything about therapy. And to
Hmm.
me, the research is very clear. one, that a lot of people are going to experience pelvic floor dysfunction at certain points in their life. Pregnancy, postpartum, and perimenopause and menopause. Those are the 3 risk factors for developing dysfunction. So then you have a patient who comes in and works up the courage, because these are so difficult to even talk about, to talk to you about it. And you're like, oh, there's nothing that can be done. Well, 1, that's wrong. 2, it's like somebody saying, my back hurts, my elbow hurts. And like, oh, just give it 6 more months and deal with it. No, we'd probably refer that person to physical therapy, adjust their posture, strengthen their muscles, give them some lifestyle tips. But we're not doing that for women, particularly with this part of their body. So she's going to go on and leak throughout her pregnancy, not be able to run because she doesn't want to, wet her pants. She may not be able to socialize. She may feel embarrassed. And then it's not going to get better after birth, after she's potentially pushed a baby out or had a surgery. So we're dismissing these issues for women, and that means they only get worse when they go untreated. And I see the same thing happen during perimenopause and menopause. You have vaginal dryness. You have, frequent waking at night to pee. You have symptoms of a urinary tract infection, but no infection. You have pain with sex. And we're like, oh, you're just getting older. I'm like, no, that's not the case. We have more awareness about erectile dysfunction than we do about pelvic organ prolapse, which 50% of women will experience. So we're just not giving women the attention and care that they deserve.
Yeah, and here's the thing. It's on us to do it, and you're doing it, sister, by writing this book. But for real, because here's the thing. The patriarchal system that we've been all subjected to, and I'm not being victim-y, it's just reality. There's more information about erectile dysfunction because it affects men. We know this. This is not like rocket science. This is the truth. But we're done waiting. It's funny you brought up menopause. I just interviewed one of my girlfriends, Tamsin Fidel, who just wrote a book, How to
New Menopause. Yeah, How to Menopause, a great one.
Yes.
She's wonderful.
Yeah. So we were just yakking about this and sort of been on the front line of the menopause movement, because I was having menopause symptoms years ago, because I'll be 61 at the end of this month. And so when I was 45 is when I first started having, I suddenly had insomnia. What? I was like, what is that? Nothing was ever treated. No one said shit about perimenopause. There was nothing until I had suffered for probably 5 years. And I was having painful sex. And I was like, okay, this is bullshit. Like, what is the problem? When there had not been a problem. And then I started interviewing experts on my show, because I was like, I
want to get to the root of this problem, right?
Yes.
So you did your own advocacy and investigation. And I think that's what women are having to do at every life stage, is it used to be go down the rabbit holes on Google. Now we're going down the rabbit holes on social media, because it's really created this platform, good or bad, for us to kind of connect with people who don't know about a lot of things, particularly in my field, in women's health and pelvic health. And someone like Tamsin, she made a total pivot in her life to become a spokesperson for this huge change that every single woman will go through menopause, every single one. They'll have the symptoms, they'll have the pelvic floor issues, but if we don't talk about them, then we're not able to give people solutions. And that's why I love starting and keeping these conversations going, like with you, about these intimate parts of our body and these, challenging life stages.
And that there's nothing to be ashamed of.
Right.
And I feel like we've been taught so much to be ashamed of everything.
Right.
And it's just, we're just done. Is it because we've hit middle age and we just stopped giving a I'm not positive exactly what happens, other than we're so committed to really living life. Tam and I were just talking about this whole thing that you're saying, this thriving, midlife thriving into the next best part of your life. So I'm not ashamed of my age. I'm not ashamed of anything. And I'm not going to let anyone make me be ashamed. That makes sense? I will do my own advocacy. That. I will,
And I love that you're really modeling that for other women. I think for me, I started this kind of social media, crusade to educate people about their bodies when I had worked in this field for 10 years. And when you've seen thousands of women come to you with very similar stories over and over again, you're like, I don't want my career to be doing damage control. I want to help women prevent these issues. I want to give them resources. Yeah. And I don't want them to have to be just lucky enough to get referred to pelvic floor therapy or happen to live at the time I was in Dallas where I work. And so I just think that in my field, kind of being on this side, I was like, first of all, everybody deserves this. And then when I gave birth, I had 2 really wonderful, easy, unmedicated births. And I was like, okay, if this is possible, it's not possible for everyone, then everyone should have access to this information. It shouldn't just be Sarah who was lucky enough to choose this field that spared her vagina, right? Like everybody deserves that chance.
Everyone's vagina should be spared is all we're saying.
No vagina left behind. Right.
All right. So what are the top things that you yourself do to take care of your own pelvic floor?
I love this. And so some of them are really simple things, and I go over this. It's kind of like the end of the book. But I also share these tips when people pre-order the book from my website. They're so simple because this doesn't have to be a whole lifestyle change. So what are the things we're doing every day, day in and day out? We're peeing. So when you're peeing, you should only go to the bathroom when you have the urge to go. You really should try to cut out those just in case pees. What happens is that if you start going more frequently, what's normal to pee is every 2 to 4 hours. But say you go when before you drop off your kids in the morning, and then when you get back, and then before you go to the gym, and you don't even have the urge, your bladder shrinks. And then you end up having to go to the bathroom every 30 minutes and every hour, and then you're going to the bathroom all the time. Yeah. And you're kind of messing up the signals because the bladder's not full. The other thing is you should not overstretch your bladder. So I work with a lot of nurses and teachers and physicians who will go 8 hours and not pee. And their muscles get really tight and tense, and they have a hard time relaxing their pelvic floor. So then they start pushing to pee, or they get urinary tract infections. So again, every 2 to 4 hours. And then the other thing is when you do pee, you should sit down on the toilet. Don't hover unless it's like a totally gross toilet. Sit down. Lean forward and relax. So don't push your pee out. You should just sit and chill. Because one of the biggest challenges I see for women is we want to be efficient and we want to be fast and we want to power pee and get out of there as fast as possible, but it's damaging your pelvic floor over time. So sit, chill, and just let it flow.
That's such good advice because, wow, I feel so called out on so many of those things.
So many people tell me, they're like, when I'm in the bathroom, I feel like you're in there with me, Sarah. And I'm like, good, then I'm doing my job. When it comes to pooping, I tell people to put a little squatty potty or a stool, a footstool under their feet. And that helps your pelvic floor muscles relax better so that you can, have a bowel movement without straining. Straining during a bowel movement can weaken your pelvic floor more than coughing, running, lifting weights, jumping, sit-ups, any of those things. So if you're straining day in and day out, it can lead to pelvic floor issues over time, like weakness and prolapse. The last thing I tell people is to exhale with exertion. So if you're lifting weights at the gym, you shouldn't be like holding your breath. If you're lifting your grandkid or a heavy box of groceries or pushing a piece of furniture, don't hold your breath. That puts pressure down. So you should always be exhaling as you exert effort. So if you're in the gym and you're doing all your strength training because you're a, perimenopause rock star or menopause rock star and you're doing it, you need to be contracting your pelvic floor with each repetition and exhaling. And that's an easy way to get that pelvic floor strengthening in activities you already do.
Makes so much sense. I was going to say about the power peeing before, which now we're not going to call it that, but
well, we're going to stop it. We can call it that, but we're going to say no to power peeing.
No to power peeing. But you had a post that you did on TikTok about this.
I know.
Go viral.
Viral.
So what do you think that response basically says about the state of female healthcare and like what we know and what we don't know?
That we know so little. That's such a little tip that everybody should know. They don't know. And it's like, that is like pelvic floor 101 for pelvic floor therapists. So it was like 35 million people saw that. And some people are like, I like my pee to come out like it's, like a fire hose. And I'm like, well, that's fine, but your pelvic floor doesn't. So it's a choice you make. And I would make a different choice. The other thing is that these things are so simple. It's like learning to brush your teeth and floss your teeth and have good dental hygiene. We can just make some really small changes in our day-to-day lives that help our pelvic floor in the long run.
That's so good. So you also talk about in here, and you talk about publicly, like big vulva industry.
Yeah.
So this booming industry that's selling women, I never got this myself, products like vaginal deodorants, where they're like the deodorants you can use all over. Why do I need a vaginal deodorant, though? So what are your thoughts about big vulva industry?
Right. So, it's interesting because my background is in healthcare. I'm a healthcare provider, and I think that when we start to push into wellness, there's a little bit of a gray area where we want to be proactive and have, vulva care and vulva wellness practices. But then I think we just get into this arena that is completely not backed by science. It's almost mythical, and it's capitalizing on people who have real issues, but you're selling them snake oil in some sense. So, I think that there's kind of different categories. When it comes to vulvar hygiene, you really don't need to use a lot to cleanse the area. So the vagina is the inside. You don't need to do anything to cleanse the inside. It's like a self-cleaning oven. So no douching, no scented washes, nothing. But externally, you can also just use water and rinse it in the shower. But if you want to use a mild, gentle vulvar cleanser, that's fine. But you don't need to take a loofah and scrub down there or do anything really harsh. It's just very simple. And these are sensitive areas, so you don't need a lot of harsh chemicals or something that glitters, sparkles, glows, smells. And then the other thing is that you have a very natural, mild scent to the area, but if you're having to put a deodorant on it because the scent is so strong, you could be masking something that's a real condition, an infection, something else bigger that you're not addressing. Right. So I don't think that we need to be pushing these things on people. I'm fine to give them options, but I don't think we need to continue to the narrative that this area is smelly or dirty or needs all of this, extra stuff because it's yucky and dirty. I mean, this is how I think we probably got to this point of not talking about this part of our body. The other part is these procedures that are kind of mentioned as medical procedures, but it's like a chair you can sit on that does 20,000 kegels a day for you. I'm like, you don't need to do 20,000 kegels a day, right? Or like a laser wand that you put in the vagina and it's going to rejuvenate your vagina like you're 19. I'm like, well, I've had 2 babies. My vagina's not going to be like it's 19 anymore. But I think that we don't give women the real information that these procedures are expensive. Just doing exercise can be as effective and much less costly. And sometimes these things don't work at all. And you spend a lot of money and a lot of resources and a lot of time, and you don't get the results that you're looking for. So I just think we need to be a little bit more transparent about the real value of these things and offering exercise and therapy as another option instead of a little bit of an afterthought.
Yeah. One of my friend's daughters did a movie, like a documentary film, a bunch of years ago for HBO, and it was about, I think it was called Pretty Baby, and it was about all of these young girls, 16, 17, 15, getting vulvaectomies. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, vulvectomies, and they have their labia trimmed. It's called, and there's something called a labiaplasty, where they trim down the labia to make it look like they were coining them like designer vaginas.
Yeah. So if that doesn't make you want to, I don't know what, drink. I mean, it was shocking. It was actually a really amazing documentary. Rana Gradis is her name, who did the
I'll look it up.
documentary.
But this is happening.
Oh my God, so depressing. And this was years ago.
I know. And your pelvic, well, first of all, everybody's vulva is different. Like the labia are different sizes. Sometimes one's, longer than the other, or they protrude out, or they're, in. And if it causes you discomfort, like sometimes there's rubbing against your underwear, or you can't run, or it's really irritating because it's, longer. There are, I think, situations where people want to get them modified, but it absolutely should not be the gold standard for how we need to have a designer vagina. I mean, this is a functional part of our body, and it's like an elbow. I'm like, I don't look at my elbow and be like, that is an ugly elbow. I need to change those elbow folds. I'm like, this is literally a body part. And let's just there's a function and a reason to it. And then they don't tell you. You could damage nerve endings. You could have scar tissue. You could develop infections. It could change the way you orgasm. There's always a side effect to a procedure that I think we're just not informing women about, because we sometimes are just more focused on the vanity of the vulva versus the actual function of the vulva.
It's so interesting. You have these countries and cultures that are just maiming young girls with clitorectomies, and this is part of their culture, and obviously
Right.
it's outlawed in many, many places now. But the irony of having people here spend millions of dollars because there's no way that's covered by insurance,
Right.
this
And making it an
vanity.
elective procedure. Yeah, and there was a physician who was doing these and kind of priding himself on, creating designer vaginas. And, first of all, it's a man. So I think that says something in itself. And
Hmm.
I mean, sometimes I think it's okay to have some levity about these topics and to be lighthearted and also to say like, hey, people have options. But I think there's a fine line between that and shaming women for how their bodies look. And
Without a doubt. It's also porn doesn't help, right? This surgeons, it's a different culture. It's a different generation than, I don't know. I don't, I could, maybe I'm naive. Maybe I'm a prude. I have no idea. But when you didn't grow up with the internet in your face, because I didn't,
right,
maybe that's part of why porn was just not like a thing. It wasn't, I was never into it. I never was like, can't wait to watch porn. Like, I don't know. Maybe it was always a guy thing. My husband's not into it. Or maybe, point is, I know that it's become an epidemic. I
yeah,
know that it is available everywhere, so readily available. And so maybe I feel like what is portrayed in pornos, as my mother would call them. Does anyone even call them that anymore? Pornos? Probably not. That's like so
I have zero
1978.
idea. It sounds fine to me. I mean, I don't know either.
But, what you're looking at is it's
Reality.
not an average sexual encounter. It's not an average person. It's not real life, right? This is just fake life. But I do think that has been influencing what young boys want,
Yeah.
younger men, let's say, and then them saying that to young women makes them want to do those things. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
I
And it's
mean,
interesting. I definitely see two different camps because I mean, I have two sons and I was reading something that like, young boys are introduced to pornography. Often the average age is 9 years old, where I'm like, oh my gosh, like they're babies, and then that
mhm,
imprint is on their brain for the rest of their
yep,
lives.
yep,
But I also think that there is a camp of men who I think are supportive of women in this way,
mm,
who I get a lot of partners reach out to me and say, hey, I'm looking on the internet and I think my wife has this. She has, she's leaking during pregnancy. Can you help her? Or she has pain with sex and, she's so upset about it. And I know it's not her fault, but I don't know how to help her. Can you help her?
mhm,
And we see, parents and fathers, like, two partner households, both partners are becoming more involved in raising children and, dual income
yep,
houses. So I think that balances some of this. But
mhm,
it's funny because one of my girlfriends just a few weeks ago, her daughter said, oh, does, Sarah have any daughters? And she goes, no, she just has, her two boys. She goes, well, that is a missed opportunity for the Vagina Whisperer. Like, oh, but she doesn't have any daughters to talk to or teach about this. And I said, but I have two sons
sure,
who like know what a period is and they see tampons and they see my body with, saggy boobs and a soft belly after kids. And that's a normal body for them, for a woman. So
mm,
part of this is like, we can change that for any
yes.
gender. And that's where I feel like we can really start making some impact is not just with our generation, but like the generations that follow.
Absolutely. It's all like it's all there for the taking, meaning it's all there for the educating, which you are doing so beautifully, Sarah, which I super appreciate. That's two more questions. One is paint the picture. What happens if it's like left, if it's untreated, if there are pelvic floor issues, but left untreated? What then can happen?
Sometimes they stay the same, but I would say more often than not, they get worse because something always led to that, right? Like if you
Mhm.
have weakness, something led to that weakness. It could be an event like pregnancy or birth, but then with aging and changes in hormones, that will only get worse with time. Or say
Mhm.
you are lifting heavy and you injure the muscle, you're going to keep lifting, right? So it's not getting to the root of the problem and making those changes and making the exercises, doing the exercises, it likely won't get better and can potentially only get worse. And so,
Mm.
but I will say this, it's also never too late. I have women in their 50s,
That's
60s,
amazing.
70s coming in for leakage, prolapse, painful sex. And, I may not get them 100% better, but they can absolutely make improvements and learn the tips and tools to manage these issues in the long run so they don't feel like they just have to kind of live a life of, discomfort or leakage or shame. So I encourage women at any stage to get support, to get help, read the book, utilize the tips, make these small changes, even if you're not ready to go see a therapist. And then if you do need more help, you can go see someone one-on-one. But it's never too late, but it likely won't get better and it will potentially only get worse.
All right. So people can pre-order the book and then they get something if they do. They get the symptoms. Yeah.
Right. So if you pre-order the book, it's on my website, thevagwhisperer.com/floored. The name of the book is Floored, A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Stage. And you get, you get the book on your doorstep on day one. It's available to all retailers, but I'll also gift everyone 30 days to my pelvic floor workout platform. So if you want to dip your toes in and just start, working on some exercises and tips before you even get the book, you have the chance to do that. And then I send over like a sneak peek with my top 10 pelvic floor tips that I do every day. I want to make this accessible and available to everybody. And I hope that it's a book that every woman, whether it's you, Terri, or, I have nieces, I have sisters, I have, 2 moms. And so I just want everyone to be able to access this information at every stage of life. And then, as you mentioned, I'm also on social media, on Instagram as the Vagina Whisperer, where I occasionally wear a vulva costume, and it's a don't miss opportunity when those videos pop up.
I love it. Okay. So you guys, this is the book. It's very beautiful too, by the way. I really love
Thank
the color,
you.
the cover design. Those of you watching on YouTube can see how gorgeous it is. A Woman's Guide to Pelvic Floor Health at Every Age and Every Stage, floored by Dr. Sara Reardon. She is the creator of the Vagina Whisperer. I mean, come on, people. If you are having anything, and you just want to be empowered, go get this book. Sara, it was such a pleasure having you. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. Thank you for fighting the good fight for all of us.
Thank you, Terri, for having me.